Thanks to Subaru for partnering with us on this SciShow miniseries. The all-new 2020 Subaru Outback helped us stay comfortable during filming. Welcome back to Washington. This is the final episode in our mini-series about the geology of Olympic National Park.
So far, we've talked about Mt.Olympus and an ancient island that transformed Washington. And now it's time for one last story. Stefan, let's hit the beach.
Oh yeah! Last week, when we were at Rialto Beach, you might have noticed a bunch of cool rock towers in the background. Those are called sea stacks, and these beaches in Western Washington are famous for them.
But these rocks don't just look cool. They also tell a fascinating story about how this landscape has changed over the last few centuries. Welcome to Ruby Beach!
We figured that while we were in Washington, we should visit at least two places that have sea stacks. I mean, like, when in Rome, right?
Something like that. Anyway, so behind us are some of Ruby Beach's famous sea stacks. Sea stacks can be made of all kinds of rock, but the ones here are generally made of the sedimentary rock breccia and mostly volcanic conglomerate. Basically, that means they're made of a bunch of rocks that got cemented together.
Meanwhile, the ones over at Rialto Beach are made of volcanic basalt, sedimentary sandstone, and conglomerate, depending on where you look.
Exactly what the stack is made of doesn't matter that much. But the important thing to know is that these sea stacks are made of a harder rock than the stuff you tend to find on the mainland. And that's important because of how sea stacks are formed in the first place.
Sea stacks form because of something called preferential erosion. You start off with a headland, or a piece of coast that juts out into the ocean. As the ocean waves come in, they get bent around the headland and end up hitting the coast in specific spots. And that's where the trouble starts, or the fun. If the area where the waves hit is made of softer rock, or made of a rock that contains some kind of fracture, the waves will erode it. That leads to small indents in the headland, and then small caves, and then eventually the water cuts straight through, and then you're left with a sea arch. You can find sea arches all over the place, but it's not like erosion stops once the sea arch is formed. The waves continue to erode the rock, and over time the arch can get bigger until it eventually collapses into sea stacks.
But rock composition isn't the only variable. According to a cool model published in 2014, the beach in front of the sea stack is important too. The model found that really wide beaches tend to prevent sea stacks from forming because they act as sort of protective barriers. Basically, the waves crash against the beach and don't actually hit the headland. Meanwhile, really narrow beaches can encourage sea stacks to form. In that case, the water picks up all the sand and other sediment and rubs it against the headland kind of like sandpaper, so erosion happens faster. Overall, this means that if Ruby Beach were a lot wider, we might not have these nice rocks to look at.
So the sea stacks in Olympic National Park are pretty cool, but this is not the only place you can find them. They're all over the world, from Scotland to Australia. And when you do find them, they can tell you some things about the place that you're visiting.
For one, at the most basic level, you can learn where the coastline used to be, because anywhere there's a sea stack, well, that used to be part of the mainland.
Sea stacks also tell you that waves are mainly approaching the coast head on, rather than on an angle. When the waves come in sideways, they erode mostly one side of a headland, and that makes it a lot harder for sea stacks to form.
And finally, sea stacks tell you that there's a sort of balanced system happening here, kind of like what we talked about in the Mt.Olympus episode earlier on this trip. If you find a sea stack, you know there's a good amount of sediment moving around and eroding the cliffs, but not so much that it forms a wide, protective beach that prevents erosion. So generally, when you find a sea stack, there won't be some kind of huge, sprawling beach stretching way out into the water.
Instead, you're more likely to see something like this. So while sea stacks are pretty cool, they won't last forever. Probably not more than a few hundred years, depending on how big they are and what they're made of.
They're a reminder that the land around you is constantly changing, and that there's a lot you can learn if you know what to look for.
But there's one more thing that we should mention about sea stacks, because while they're really nice to look at, they're also kind of dangerous.
It's true. Like in the late 1800s, one ship near Rialto Beach got caught in some rough waves and foggy weather. Someone on board saw a sea stack through the fog and thought it was another boat, so they decided to steer toward it and ended up crashing.
There have actually been over 100 shipwrecks off the coast of Washington due to sea stacks, rough waters, tons of fog, and reefs that are hiding just under the waves. So while these are nice to look at during the daytime,
we're gonna stick to dry land. And on that note, we should probably head back to the car and tell Hank we're about done here.
That sounds great. So until next time, thank you for joining us on our road trip.
partnering with us for this 3-part road trip series, and for lending us the support of an all-new 2020 Subaru Outback.
Yeah, we had to drive a lot to make these episodes, both inside Olympic National Park and out, and all the features of the Outback helped make our trip a lot easier.
My favorite feature was the roomy cargo space. We fit our luggage and even our film gear super easily, and with the hands-free power rear gate, I didn't have to put my bags down on the wet ground to open the door, which is always the struggle, right?
If you want to learn more about the 2020 Subaru Outback, you can check out the link in the description.